But if all synthetic judgments are like that, if all synthetic judgments are contingent, a posteriori, and empirical, then that doesn't leave a whole lot for metaphysics, because metaphysics isn't merely the unpacking of concepts. That's what things for Hume, for example, things like geometry does. A geometry takes the concept of a triangle and finds everything that's implicit in that concept. So geometry would be an a priori analytic discipline. But think about some of the main statements of metaphysics. Metaphysics isn't merely unpacking concepts. Think about Aristotle's claim that the world was put into motion by a first mover. That's not just part of the concept of the world. The world was put into motion by a first mover. It could have been not put into motion by anything at all. Or it could have been that the world is not in motion at all. That's what Parmenides said in the ancient world, that the world actually isn't in motion. So it seems like metaphysics is adding new things to the concept. So if we say the world was put into motion by a first mover, the idea of a first mover and the idea of a world, these are two separate ideas being put together by metaphysics. So that would have to be, for it to be metaphysics and not science, right? Science is the empirical discipline. Metaphysics is the a priori discipline. So in order for metaphysics to work out, we would need something like a synthetic a priori. And Hume didn't think that this was part of reason's capabilities to make synthetic a priori statements. Consider another famous statement from metaphysics. Every event has a sufficient cause. That's, again, not a merely conceptual truth. Now, some philosophers have tried to say that it is a conceptual truth. Leibniz is an example. But the idea that Hume convincingly argued that the idea of a cause and effect are two separate ideas. The effect is not contained in the cause. Remember, that was Hume's big idea. The effect is not contained in the cause. So statements about cause and effect cannot be analytic. And since Hume thought there was no synthetic a priori, statements about cause and effect can't be a priori at all. So there is none of this universal necessity of reason in our statements about cause and effect. So Kant's big idea is that there are synthetic a priori judgments, and he gives some famous examples, and not only in metaphysics but in, for example, arithmetic. So take this example here: 7 plus 5 equals 12. Kant argues there's 12 is not contained in 7 or 5. The number 7 has nothing to do with the number 12, and the number 5 has nothing to do with the number 12 either. So when we say 7 plus 5 equals 12, we are actually making a synthetic a priori claim. This isn't an empirical claim. It couldn't be otherwise. It's a priori and it's necessary, but it's taking two concepts, 7 and 5, and adding something new to them, the sum of 12. So Kant says, actually, there's been a lot of synthetic a priori statements out there. Another example that Kant takes from the new Newtonian mechanics around at the time, which, again, Hume and Kant were both very impressed with, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Kant thinks that this is a synthetic a priori statement. It's necessary and universal according to Newtonian mechanics. It couldn't be otherwise. And it's not an a posteriori statement for Kant. It's a priori. But at the same time, it's not merely analytic. We don't get an equal and opposite reaction by simply unpacking the concept of an action. The concept of an action is enriched when we apply the concept of an equal and opposite reaction to it. So this is again a synthetic statement. It adds something new to the concept of action, but it's a priori. It could not have been otherwise. And we don't learn about this through distinct experiences. This is part of the way all experiences unfold. So again, Hume thought synthetic a priori concepts or statements were impossible. We couldn't make them. It's just not part of our reasoning capacity to do this. For that, as a result, metaphysics and other important philosophical disciplines do not issue forth originally from reason, but from some other capacity of the human understanding. In Hume's case, habit. For Kant, no, we need to enlarge our notion of reason. Reason has a bigger scope than Hume thought. And because of that, we can say that also metaphysics and other kinds of philosophical statements do originate in reason, just this part of reason that Hume didn't conceive of.